Okay guys, welcome to Module 1. In this module, our trainer will give you a brief overview of gatekeepers and some ideas of how to get past them. So get ready to take some notes and let's jump right in.
The dreaded gatekeeper has been a part of the cold calling game for decades. Sales professionals have spent their careers trying to develop and fine-tune different tactics for getting past these B2B guardians and through to the decision makers so they can book appointments and make sales. A gatekeeper is someone whose job it is to keep you away from the person you're trying to reach. Typically, they're a receptionist, secretary, or executive assistant, although that's not always the case. They man the phones, they take incoming calls, they assess those calls to determine whether they're important or legitimate, expected calls, and they filter out the calls that they think the decision maker won't want to be bothered with. They know you're out there. They've been warned, trained, even coached to look for telltale signs of cold calling salespeople. They've been lied to, tricked, made to look like fools around the office by some cold callers, and many of them regularly lie themselves too, although it's usually to say someone is in a meeting or not in the office. For most of them, it's not their first rodeo. They're ready for you. And with every passing year, they're getting smarter, savvier, and better at their job. Which is why you and your business need to stay on the cutting edge of this concept as well. Let's go over some ways you can do that. So for starters, remember what your parents taught you. And what I mean is just use basic manners. Make sure you're saying please, make sure you're saying thank you, make sure you're using emphatic versions of those, like thanks so much for your help, and so on and so forth. Be nice. You have to keep in mind the gatekeeper is someone who the company likes. That's why they're in that position. They wouldn't be manning the phones if the company didn't like him or her. Does that kind of make sense? If they're sitting there at the counter and they've had that job, clearly the decision maker that you want to work with, whose good side you want to be on, likes this person enough to keep her or him there in that position. So the last thing you want to do is be on bad terms with someone who everybody in the office likes. And the very last thing you want to do is end up on the blacklist for being rude or impatient. Social bonds and camaraderie, all that's really very real in an office environment. And in many cases, that will override profit, which means no matter how cool what you're selling is, they'll choose not to do business with you if they have the impression that you are not respecting one of their valued team members. Next, use first names, and that includes theirs, not just the executives. So if you call in, and the gatekeeper says, Munder Difflin, this is Pam, how may I direct your call? Your first sentence should be, Hi Pam, can you put me through to such and such? Mention the gatekeeper's name. This has been proven time and time again. It's not a silver bullet, right? It's not a skeleton key. It's not going to guarantee that you get through, but it does, and it's been proven, it does have some psychological advantages. So mention their first name and use the executive's first name when possible, if you did a good job of collecting that information to begin with. Next thing is understand their perspective. And what I really mean is, no kidding, sit down and pretend, do a thought experiment. Pretend that you are the gatekeeper at their company. Maybe you have a scary boss or an impatient boss. Maybe you have a boss who you really, really like and respect, and you're actually motivated to keep the annoying salespeople away from him or her. Maybe you deal with cold callers all day long. Maybe by the time you're calling in, they've already had like 10 cold calls that morning. Maybe you as a gatekeeper, remember we're pretending to be in their shoes here. Maybe you deal with people lying all the time, people trying to pull those sly little tricks that you hear about, and you're annoyed by it, understandably. Understand their perspective so that you'll have that in your back pocket when you call them. Next, just practice good listening skills. Be a human when they're speaking. If they're saying things, practice those good active listening skills that we've all learned. If they say, oh man, he's really busy now, you can say, oh yeah, I can imagine. I know that guy's busy. Or, oh, we've really been swamped because of XYZ recent event. And you can say, oh, no kidding, wow. Even something as simple as sure, or totally understand being inserted here or there when they're saying things or explaining a situation can go a long way in increasing likability. and making yourself sound much more human. Next, to piggyback on using their name after they've told it to you, don't just use it in a sentence during the call, but mark it down, remember it. Make a note in your CRM for when you call them again. Because if you call them and you're immediately using their name, or if you're reaching out via email and using their name, again, it establishes you as an actual fellow human being. And it has a positive psychological effect on the whole thing. So keep that in mind, put it down in your CRM. That name should be as important to you as the name of the executive you're trying to reach, as far as the intelligence gathering and putting the information into your CRM. Next, make sure you end on a positive note no matter what happened. And what that means is, even if you didn't have success, you didn't get through the decision maker, you got kicked back or rejected again, don't let those emotions show in your voice. You have to mask that and end on a very positive and appreciative note. Oh, that's too bad. All right, I'll try some other time. Thanks so much for your time. Have a great rest of your day. Make sure it's a positive tone and a positive message when you end, because guess what? You're going to have to be dealing with that gatekeeper again. And you want to make sure you maintain the positivity in that relationship between you and them. Next, and this is kind of an outside-the-box thing, and it might actually be a little bit cliche if you use it in the wrong situation, but if you actually spent a little bit of time on the phone with the gatekeeper, you established a connection and they tried to help you reach so-and-so or gave you some info on this or that, it wouldn't hurt to send them a little thank you card. Even a thank you email, but a thank you card would be really classy. Again, don't send them a thank you card if all you had was like a 2-sentence conversation, because that'll seem pretentious. You want to avoid being pretentious. And that actually applies to a lot of things that we're going to learn that can be really good tactics for getting past gatekeepers. But if you're not really careful with how and when you use them, it can come off as pretentious or disingenuous. Okay, but this, if the circumstances call for it and your gut tells you that this would be a good idea, go ahead and send a thank you card, because then your name will be more memorable to them, okay, and they're more likely to pay a little bit more attention to you when you call or follow up in the future. So all of these have been pretty basic points, right? Pretty elementary. There are no ninja hacks shared yet. We just wanted to cover the basics here so that you're prepared mentally when you start your cold calling. This is sort of the basic 101 level foundation that everybody should have. In the next video, we'll cover some more advanced tips and tricks for getting past the gatekeeper.